Welcome to Study Time, a televised home learning program produced by Rwanda Education Board.
Hello students, a very warm welcome to the TV learning programs. As usual, I'm your teacher of biology, Herbert, and I will be taking you through the biology of senior 2, unit 7, which is concerning about photosynthesis. And we are on lesson 2. We're going to discuss about limiting factors of photosynthesis. What are the learning objectives of the lesson? But before I mention the learning objective of the lesson, I'd like to inform you to get a pen and even a book. You note the important concepts and ideas concerning about the lesson. Student, welcome to the lesson. So we have two learning objectives of this unit. Is to explain the limiting factors of photosynthesis. What are the limiting factors of photosynthesis? Objective number 2 is to describe the internal structure of a leaf and its adaptation to photosynthesis. So let's start our lesson. I think everybody is ready to start the lesson, and you're going to enjoy the lesson. I think you still remember how we talked about photosynthesis. What is photosynthesis? We said photosynthesis is the process by which the green plant make their own food in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. Don't forget to mention about sunlight and chlorophyll. If you remember, you also be able to write a chemical equation or a summarized chemical equation for photosynthesis. So when we talk about limiting factors, what is a limiting factor in a common understanding? A limiting factor are variables which limits the rate of photosynthesis. So these variables that can limit the rate of photosynthesis are referred to as limiting factors. So the process of photosynthesis does not always take place efficiently or effectively when these variables or when these limiting factors are absent. Sometimes there are some factors that hinder its progress. These factors that can hinder its progress are referred to as limiting factors. Photosynthesis may be limited by a shortage in supply of one or more raw materials or other factors necessary for photosynthesis. So let's have what I'm mentioning and what I'm talking about. I said the limiting factors is a variable which limits the rate of photosynthesis. These variables that can limit the rate of photosynthesis are referred to as limiting factors. As I said, that the process of photosynthesis does not always take place efficiently when there are limiting factors. Sometimes there are some factors that hinder the progress. And the progress, photosynthesis may be limited by a shortage in supply of one or more of raw materials. When there is a supply of one or raw materials or the other factors necessary for photosynthesis, in that way, the rate of photosynthesis is going to be limited. Some of these factors are given below. We have a number of them that can limit the rate of photosynthesis. I would like for you to think about what are those factors that can limit the rate of photosynthesis. What are those factors? We have number 1, A, the intensity of light. We have number 2. We're going to have carbon dioxide concentration. Carbon dioxide concentration is also another limiting factor for the progress or for the process of photosynthesis to take place. We have another one which is we're trying to see. We have temperature. It's also another limiting factor for photosynthesis. We are going to talk about enzymes catalyzing the reaction when they can just be inhibited or where they can just be affected by high temperature. We have, this is the temperature, and then we have water is another factor, another limiting factor that affects the process or that can inhibit the rate of photosynthesis. And now we're going to see the internal structure of a leaf and its adaptation for photosynthesis. So these are the things we're going to discuss. Let's start our lesson immediately to talk about some of the limiting factors for photosynthesis. Let's talk about light intensity. The intensity of light varies with the time of the day. You know, we have time of during night, we have during the day. So seasons and even the position of the plants on the Earth's surface, how the plants are positioned on the Earth's surface. And automatically, when we talk about the position of may find how the plant is positioned, will not be able to access light. And we know that light is one of the essential elements for photosynthesis. I can be clear to mention that light is a condition for photosynthesis. So, as I mentioned, the position of the plants on our surface, light is necessary for photosynthesis to occur. It means that when there's absence of light, the plant cannot carry out photosynthesis, the way how it could make its own food. In the darkness, plant cannot photosynthesize at all. That is very obvious. When it is in darkness, the plant cannot photosynthesize at all. Lower light intensity, the rate of photosynthesis is low. So it means that low light intensity, that is low photosynthesis. Plant cannot photosynthesize at all. And in low light intensity, the rate of photosynthesis is low. But as light intensity increases, once the intensity of light increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases. That one is very clear. You can note that one. Make a note of it. I said, during darkness, the plant cannot photosynthesize at all. But in low light intensity, the rate, talk about the rate of photosynthesis, is low. But as light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases. Let's go through this. These are the things that you're able to understand them, and you're able to go through that one. It means that light intensity, we'll talk about light intensity. High light intensity and low light intensity. What happens? The process of photosynthesis. When there's high light intensity, high rate of photosynthesis. Low light intensity, low rate of photosynthesis. That is very clear. They reach a point where the plant cannot photosynthesize any faster, even with further increase of light intensity. And at this point, any other factor affecting the rate of photosynthesis hinders the rate of photosynthesis. Let me have the diagram. We have a diagram. Let's go through let me use the chart. We state it graphically and see how does the rate of photosynthesis is going to be affected by light intensity. This is the diagram. We have the rate of photosynthesis. At A, we have B, we have C. At 0.04, what happens? The rate of photosynthesis is increasing. When it comes to 0.08, automatically the light intensity, we're talking about light intensity. When the light intensity increases to 0.08, what happens? The rate of photosynthesis will also increase. I can say it also doubles. As you're increasing the rate intensity, you're also doubling the rate of photosynthesis. It's very clear and very interesting. So when you continue increasing to 0.8, they reach a time. There's a time or this point, any further factor affecting the rate of photosynthesis, hinders the rate of photosynthesis. But when it continues, it reaches what you call, to the maximum, mentioned to the maximum, where the rate of photosynthesis will no longer be increasing. So it will start becoming what you call static, stationary. I can say this in terms of growth, we can talk about this is, the rate of photosynthesis is very slow. As light is increasing, the rate of photosynthesis also increases. But when it continues reaching to the maximum, the rate of photosynthesis becomes to be stationary. It is no longer increasing. So the graph shows the effect of light intensity, the light intensity on rate of photosynthesis. As light is increasing, the rate of photosynthesis is also increasing. As you double the rate of light intensity, you're also increasing the rate of photosynthesis. But it reaches where the light will become to be what you call optimum, and become to be stationary, to no longer, the rate of photosynthesis where it will no longer be increasing. So between point A and point B, the rate of photosynthesis is affected by the amount of sunlight, as you are seeing on our graph, a graph presentation. Automatically, from A to B, the light is affecting the rate of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is affected by amount of sunlight because there is high increase. There's a dramatic increase that you can just be able to see. Because if I'm trying to show you, we've been seeing that if I have a chart like this one, this is light intensity, all right? As you're increasing, because as the light is increasing, you can just be increasing and reach to this step. This is A, this is B, and this is C. If you are going back to the chart, to the diagram, here we have the rate of photosynthesis, Here we talk about light intensity. I'll try to use an abbreviation. This is light intensity, the intensity of light. So we can see from A and B, there is an effect of light, of sunlight. So that is increase in light intensity reduced to the increase in the rate of photosynthesis. Once you increase the light intensity, you're also increasing the rate of photosynthesis. Light is therefore a limiting factor. It means that once there is less light, less photosynthesis. More light intensity, more rate of photosynthesis. It is very clear and everybody can understand. Between part B and C, from here B and C, you're able to see and understand. However, the plant cannot photosynthesize any faster, even with the increase of light intensity. At this point, light is no longer a limiting factor. Instead, other factors limit the rate. From here up to C, light is no longer a limiting factor. But from A up to B, light could be acting as a limiting factor. Let's talk about carbon dioxide concentration. Carbon dioxide, you remember that plants, they use carbon dioxide as a raw material for photosynthesis. Student, I think you do remember how carbon dioxide is going to be used as a raw material for photosynthesis, and how carbon dioxide is going to be acting as a limiting factor for photosynthesis. The amount of carbon dioxide in atmosphere is quite, we know that it is almost 0.03. Therefore, it can also be a limiting factor to photosynthesis. Once the carbon dioxide is increased, because if you're talking about in atmosphere, it is 0.03% in atmosphere. Once it increases beyond that, when it increases above that, increasing in carbon dioxide increases the rate of photosynthesis, exactly, but this continues only to a certain point where the rate of photosynthesis does not increase further with more carbon dioxide, since other factors affecting photosynthesis become a limiting factor. So let's have a chart also to show you how the carbon dioxide, because let's have the chart, the diagram that shows how carbon dioxide concentration can be a limiting factor. From A up to B again. Let me change here, we have to put there the carbon dioxide concentration. Let's try to see. All right, this is A, this is B, and this is C. From A up to B, the rate of carbon dioxide, as carbon dioxide concentration increases, also the rate of photosynthesis increases. From B to C, the carbon dioxide is no longer a limiting factor because the rate of photosynthesis has been increased, and that is the graph of the effect of carbon dioxide concentration on rate of photosynthesis. This graph that is mentioning above is showing how carbon dioxide is acting as a limiting factor. As I mentioned, that is from A up to B, increase in concentration of carbon dioxide causes a rise of the rate of photosynthesis. Once there is increase in concentration of carbon dioxide, it also causes the rise in the rate of photosynthesis. Then from B to C, in the graph, from B to C, emitting factors set in and are further rise in carbon dioxide concentration does not cause the corresponding increase in rate because they are no longer, the carbon dioxide is no longer a limiting factor and from B to C because it has reached on what you call stationary phase. Good. Let's go to see at another limiting factor, which is temperature. How does temperature affect the rate of photosynthesis? Because you remember, one of the factors that affects enzymes are temperature. High temperature denatures enzymes because there are some of the enzymes that are responsible, that are involved in the process of photosynthesis. And once the temperature increases, automatically these enzymes that participates in the process of photosynthesis are going to be denatured, are going to be destroyed. You get the point, I think. Or once the temperature is very low, what happens? The issue is that the enzymes are going to become inactive. So temperature can also be a limiting factor for photosynthesis. I think everybody can understand that. So photosynthesis is an enzyme-catalyzed reaction. There are some of a number of enzymes that catalyzes the process of photosynthesis. And is therefore affected by temperature because I said most of the enzymes are protein in nature. High temperature denatures or destroyed enzymes. And as I mentioned it earlier, photosynthesis is an enzyme-catalyzed reaction. There are some of the enzymes that catalyzes the process of photosynthesis. So if temperature are low, what happens? Plants' photosynthesis is very slow, That is very clear. Okay? It's very slow. But as the temperature increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases. Once you increase the temperature, also the rate of photosynthesis increases. But the rate of photosynthesis is the highest at optimum temperature. At optimum temperature. Further increase in temperature above optimum temperature results in the decrease of photosynthesis since the enzymes are going to be denatured. And once the enzymes are going to be denatured, talk about the denaturing or destroyed. That means the rate of photosynthesis is going to be very slow because some of the enzyme has been denatured. So we compare two things. High temperature meaning that it must be optimum temperature for the plants to photosynthesize. That is very clear. Optimum temperature for the enzyme for the plants photosynthesize. And it means that there must be optimum temperature. But once the temperature is also above optimum temperature, what happens? Some of the enzymes which are protein in nature, which are responsible for catalyzing the reaction of photosynthesis, are going to be denatured or are going to be destroyed. And eventually, in that way, the rate of photosynthesis is going to be affected. Let's have the diagram to show how the process happens, how it takes place. I have another chart. This is chart 3, figure 3. The rate of photosynthesis increases as the temperature increases. Let me try to show you the graph. Most of these things are involving the graphs. On this side, we talk about the rate here, talking about rate of photosynthesis. talk about the rate of photosynthesis. Then we talk about temperature. What happens to the temperature increase and when the temperature is very low? Let me try to draw the graph. The graph will just be increasing and reach where it will start sloping down. Let me start, maybe this is supposed to be, maybe this is 10, this is 20, this is 30, this is 40, this is 50, and 60, and so on and so forth. So if you are trying to see, this is A, and we have another one which is supposed to be B. And here on B, I can talk about which is optimum temperature. This is optimum temperature. Okay, optimum temperature. Now the rate of photosynthesis will be able to increase once the optimum temperature has been reached. If we are trying to draw this, suppose maybe optimum temperature is 40, meaning that beyond 40, the enzyme, because the temperature has been becoming very high, they're able to destroy enzymes that participate in the reaction of photosynthesis. And that one we read into what we call being denaturing. This side is supposed to be, if I'm trying to draw, this one is denatured. The enzymes are going to be denatured, or in biology, we call it to be what you call destroyed. So that is A, increases in temperature causes the corresponding increase in the rate of photosynthesis. Rate of photosynthesis is high in B. From here up to here, the rate of photosynthesis is very high. All right? I think everybody can see it. But here, from B and going to C, let me call it B, this is C. This is C. The rate of photosynthesis is very low because enzyme has been denatured. So any further increase in temperature denatures the enzymes. Therefore, the rate of photosynthesis declines. Let me talk about another factor, which is factor D, which is water. Water is raw material. Only about 1% of water taken in by plants is used for photosynthesis. It means that 1% of the water being absorbed by the plant is going to be used for photosynthesis. Water shortage only indirect effect of rate of photosynthesis. For instance, when water is short, you have maybe during a dry season, most of the plants, they shed off their leaves. They don't photosynthesize. The rate of photosynthesis during dry season is very low compared to when it is rainy season. That's what it means. So photosynthesis, for instance, when water is in shortage supply, the stomatas close, and once the stomatas close, it means that the rate of photosynthesis is very low. This lowers the exchange of gases between leaf and even atmosphere. As a result, less carbon dioxide will not be able to diffuse via the stomatas into the leaf. And this will be able to reduce the rate of photosynthesis. Let me have the internal structure of the leaf. So we have mentioned a number of them. Some of you can remember to know them. We talked about light intensity. We talked about carbon dioxide concentration. We talked about temperature. We talked about water. These are the factors that can limit the rate of photosynthesis. And these factors are referred to as limiting factors. Let's have the internal structure of the leaf. Everybody can observe, can be able to carry out observation and see the internal structure of the leaf. This is the cuticle. We have upper epidermis, and we have parasite mesophyll layer, we have sponge mesophyll layer, we have lower epidermis, we have the stomata, we have the guard cell, air space, we have the xylem vessel, phloem vessel, and these are called vesicular bundles. So you're able to observe and see the internal structure of the leaf. And the internal structure of the leaf, that's where photosynthesis takes place. We have something which is green. We have been mentioning about chlorophyll, the green pigment found in leaves, which is also very important in trapping sunlight energy. I said the leaf has cuticle. Here I'm going to talk about some of the adaptations of the leaf to carry out photosynthesis. The leaf has a cuticle which covers both the upper and the lower surface of the leaf. We have the cuticle which normally covers the upper part and even the lower part. And I said immediately after cuticle, there is the upper and lower epidermis respectively. And we have the parasite mesophyll layer, which contains parasite cells that carry out photosynthesis. Why do you say that the parasite mesophyll layer carries a photosynthesis? There are more chloroplasts. Numerous chloroplasts, we're talking about adaptations. Numerous chloroplasts, more photosynthesis. Less number of chloroplasts, less process of photosynthesis, or less progress of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is located below the upper epidermis and is followed by a spongy mesophyll layer, which has cells which are large, with a large airspace. Large airspace between them. So we're going to mention what adaptation that the internal structure of the leaf enables it to carry the process of photosynthesis. We say there is presence of parasite layer. And the parasite layer, more chloroplasts. More chloroplasts, more photosynthesis. They are able to trap sunlight energy. We say there is presence of airspace. Airspaces, talk about airspaces, they are very important, very vital to allow the diffusion of carbon dioxide. And we said carbon dioxide is one of the limiting factors. We talked about spongy mesophyll layer, the presence of spongy mesophyll layer, which is also very important because it has more chloroplasts, which are very important in the process of photosynthesis. Without forgetting, the raw epidermis are tiny, and openings have what you call tiny openings. These tiny openings are referred to as what you call stomata. The presence of stomatas in a leaf also enables the process of photosynthesis because they are surrounded by the cells known as what you call the guard cells. These guard cells are able to open and allow the exchange of gases between the airspace and even the atmosphere. And that guard cells and presence of stomata are also present in the leaf, and these are very important and vital in helping the plant to carry the process of photosynthesis. So the following are some of the adaptations I mentioned. Leaf is broad, most leaves are thin. The thinner the leaf, the faster the rate of diffusion. We talk about the leaves have vesicular bundles, talk about the xylem and even the phloem. Presence of stomata, I've mentioned it. Leaves are arranged in what you call overlapping, not covering one another, so that they're able to absorb maximum sunlight energy. Spongy mesophyll layer cells have a regular shape, and loosely arranged hence have a large air spaces for them to absorb carbon dioxide. So let's have lesson assessment. We have almost like 4 numbers. Which of the following is not a limiting factor of photosynthesis? You go through that one: amount of oxygen, concentration of chlorophyll, length, intensity, and temperature, and even carbon dioxide concentration. Number 3, which is number 2, temperature is a factor that limits the rate of photosynthesis. Explain why photosynthesis starts to decrease temperature as temperature increases beyond 40 optimum. The last one is the atmospheric air contains 0.6 carbon dioxide. What will happen to the rate of photosynthesis if carbon dioxide level rises to 4%? So students, thank you very much for watching and learning and your active participation. Enjoy the rest of the day and see you next time.